All right, I think we should get started. So, no, we're good. My name is Marc. I'm a pastor at Milton Bible Church, and I want you guys to know that I signed up for this seminar because I wanted to be here. Our church is church planting, but then someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, would you introduce the guys who are doing it?" So I'm not here just to say hello and introduce, but I'm here because I want to be here. And I'm also excited because I know these guys, Marc, Jeremiah, and Graeme. Have been, at least two of them have been a part of my CDA association. They're church planters, they love the Lord, and I'm excited for the things they're going to be sharing with us. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to these guys here.
Well, we're going to tag team this, which is always a challenging thing to do, but we're going to work together. We've been working together for the last number of years anyways for Feb Central. And the nice thing about this is that all three of us have planted the church at some period in time, the last 10 years, right? Close? Okay. Last 11 years or so. And so we're grateful that even all three of us, our journeys to get to church planting, our journeys to plant, and then even get to the recognition and maturity and now multiplication, is all be a little bit different. And this is one of the beautiful things about the fellowship is the diversity and yet still commitment to the same principles, obviously to the scriptures and what really the Bible teaches. And so that's kind of our desire. So for today, I want to just begin by giving a little bit of an introduction to Feb Central, to church planting, our vision, and then really try to answer the question, which, again, the hardest things we need to address all the kind of broad, unique situations that we all face, but still give at least a clear direction about how to plant a church. And for our sake, I wanted to ask you first off, is are you on the sending side? As in, maybe you're a mother church or an elder at a church. You're kind of planning on supporting a church plant. Or are you more on the going side, potential going side? Nobody knows for sure until you go. But where you might lead a church plant, or you might be a part of the team or the core team, but you're kind of on the going side. So, I know you might be a little bit scared to, maybe if you're thinking about going, putting your hand up, if you're lead pastor or something. But just so we know, are we more kind of talking to people in the room that are on the sending side? So maybe raise your hands. You're on the sending side? Yeah? Okay. And then any potential on the going side? Okay, so right down the middle. So we'll try to do a bit of a balance of both. But again, we were grateful to be here together, and you probably saw all of our signs, and this is probably the first time I've been in matching uniforms as a team, but we looked pretty good. But somebody actually asked me earlier, what is Magnify? And Magnify really is our vision that encapsulates is what we're trying to do for Feb Central Church Planting. Feb Central Church Planting is also a long phrase. so Magnify, and this is a vision that comes from Psalm 34, which just talks about how we are to magnify the Lord, right? That is the purpose of our life, to glorify the Lord. And we always want to make sure of realizing what we're actually doing. Right? You're not just discipling, you're not just preaching, you're not just trying to start a church. We're doing this for a reason. And we never want to forget that reason. It's to, again, magnify the Lord, glorify Him, to exalt His name forever. And so that's really our heart behind it. And then also kind of flowing out of there, we have kind of 5 values. And these 5 values actually really work well for you as an individual, but also our grand movement across our region, and hopefully across our nation and across the world. But first, it always begins with prayer. If you're not praying for something, God's not going to work in you or work through you in that way. And so we need to begin by prayer. And so the first one is just to move the throne of God. And we need to go to Him. Jesus tells us in Matthew 9 or Luke 11 or Luke 10 to pray to the Lord of the harvest. And then it's interesting because the next thing that Jesus does is He mobilizes the gospel. He sends out His disciples right after that. The same people He has to pray, He sends them out to go and share the gospel. And so we want to not just pray, but we also want to be people who evangelize. And then we want to make disciples, right? You baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But then you teach them how to obey. And then, if you're doing that, if you're praying, if you're evangelizing, if you're making disciples, then the next thing we're hopefully going to see is churches being multiplied. And so we want to make sure that that is the step that we get to. But then it's not just about us or just even one church. The fellowship, and that's one of the beautiful things about the last day or two, is just to see that we are not just small. The Lord is doing great things amongst us. Many times we feel small, we feel like we're not a large part of our country or what's going on. The Lord is doing something. And so we want to manifest the kingdom with other fellowship churches, but also with other networks and other missions organizations, church planting networks, as we do this, not just for the Feb Central name, but again for the Lord's glory. And so for today, I'm going to pass things off shortly to Marc first, then Jeremiah, then I'll come back up. But again, we're trying to answer this question of how do you plant a church in 40 minutes. But again, our heart's desire is really to see our churches be healthy, and then therefore produce healthy babies. Right? As a sense of maturity amongst us as individuals, if you have a child, you'll want them to grow in maturity. Hopefully you'll want them to get married, if that's what the Lord has called them to, and then have babies and produce and multiply. And so that's our heart's desire for us today as well. So we're trying to answer those questions. How many here have filled out the church vitality survey that Tim Strickland sends out and makes sure that he follows up with you and do it? Okay, your churches across the fellowship have pretty much done it. And there's a question in there that says, do you have a desire, does your church have a desire or a plan to plant? And then there's certain categories. Do you plan to plant in a year, a couple years, or do you just have a desire? And it's interesting. I always think of that question as like, if I ask you as a Christian, oh, you got that in there? Oh.
You're stealing my materials?
But if I was to ask you, would you share the gospel with somebody? Should you share the gospel? You're going to say, yes. Right. And so hopefully, though, we're going to go from a desire to an actual application. And so we want to see churches that are ready to have a budget, have people, have a sending team, and going to be ready for you to do the work, because we just help in that way. We're not the ones planting the churches. We're just supporting and seeing that multiplication happen. So, Marc, I'll stop stealing your material. You can take it from here.
Cool. So my name is Marc, and we planted Forward City Church 11 years ago, and have loved it. It's been an amazing journey. We're a mother-daughter plant, so our mother church saw the call of God, reluctantly saw the call of God, and said we need to go do something to reach people that haven't already been reached, and then they sent us out to go do that. So that's kind of my context. We've a lot more conversations, and at the end of this, we're going to have a bit of a question and answer too, because we titled this "How to Start a Church," or start kind of where to start in that process. And so this is going to be a lot of information, something you probably already know, but it's contextualized in our context. So we're going to help you guys walk through that. So there's going to be some questions and answers afterwards, but I'm not going to challenge. We're not challenging you to plan. Okay? Because we assume, the assumption is you're here because you already know the theology of it. You already know it's a good idea. You already know it's a great idea. You already know you're supposed to do this, and many of you are in positions where you should be leading plants of churches. And so we're not here to tell you whether you should or you shouldn't. We know you should, and you know you should, and you know you should at least entertain this. And as Graeme was saying, as Graeme stole, it's that really interesting question that, yeah, like the conversation of should we plant, or we have a vision to plant a church. Who's going to say no to that? Of course we know that, and we know we should. So we're going to say where you start from there. So before we go into that next step, we're going to walk you through something. And so what I'm going to do, so Graeme and Jeremiah are the good cops. I'm going to be the bad cop for a minute. And hear me here. I'm not going to discourage you at all. But what I want to do is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I think are super important in this process. And the first question is, do you really want to plan it? Do you really want to? I know you wrote down that you do. I know you wrote down that, yes, it's a good idea. I know you said, yes, we absolutely need to do this. But just for a moment, I'm going to ask you, do you really want to? Because the reality is there is a cost to planting. And so you can read, there's a passage in Luke chapter 14, different version up there, but suppose that one of you wants to build a tower, won't you sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundations and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you. saying this person begun to build and wasn't able to finish. Suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he first sit down and consider whether he is able, with 10,000 men, to oppose one coming against him with 20,000? If he's not able, will he send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace? In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything can become disciples. The idea here is that there is a cost to planting. And so hear me. I am not saying that I do not want you to plant. But what I'm telling you to do for a moment is just count the cost. Because see, what happens is when churches don't count the cost, they fail to launch. They fail to actually get going. Or what happens is, as soon as the costs start getting a little bit heavy, they pull back. They take away freedom. Or what they do is they stifle the ones that they planted out. So, just for a moment, I'm just going to give you the costs. But hear me saying, it's worth it. At the very end of this, it's worth it. So the cost of this, the first one is there's a cost to the church. And you know this. There's a cost to the church. I mean, there is, I'll do this first. Let's go here. There's a cost to the pastor or leader. If you're a pastor, now, understand this, I don't know your story, don't know your situation. Maybe you're well above, more awesome than I could ever hope to be. Pastors are insecure people. Like we are. There's a cost to planting a church, and one of the costs of planting is influence. You're going to lose influence. Now, again, hear me, and I get the idea, I understand, I know, we're in a safe place. We know that God's kingdom is more important. I know we know that. I know we know God's kingdom is way more important than our kingdom, but when you plant, you will have to decrease so someone else can increase. And a lot of pastors struggle with that. A lot of pastors struggle with decreasing so someone else can increase. Because what you're doing is essentially saying to a group of people from your place, go with that guy who's probably going to be younger, probably cooler than you, probably with a bigger vision than you, probably more excited than you. So what you're saying as a pastor is, hey, we love what we're doing here, but we believe this is so important. I would like many of you who are just awesome people, I want you to go follow that person in Christ. There's a cost, there's an influence cost. And so what pastors do when they don't weigh that cost, they go high control. So what they try to do is control the church that's going out there. Saying, okay, so you're going to do it like this. So basically, you're going to do it my way, not the way that you're being released to go. So if you're going to plant, count the cost of losing influence. Because you will. That's not bad, but it's real. And some pastors struggle because we have this idea, we have this metric that health of a church is the size of a church. Because the reality is the cost to your church. There is a cost to the church to do this. There's a benefit to the kingdom, but there's a cost to the church. And the cost is people. And we know this, and this isn't new to you, but the reality is, with that unofficial metric that says numbers means success or health, you're going to lose people. You're not actually going to lose people. You're going to send people. And I know God's math's awesome. I know that God can take a subtraction and make an addition. I know how that works. Like, we're part of that. Like, our lead pastor was like, dude, I don't want to send people. But when he did, we grew through, just people coming to Christ. They grew in other ways. We actually had more people. But again, in that moment, it's hard because you're seeing people go, and it's tough. And I understand that. You're going to lose good people. You're going to lose probably some of your best people. And I know there's an amen. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But it's hard. Because the reality is you're losing people who are leading your ministries. You're going to be losing people who are leading things. You're going to be losing catalysts in your church. People who already get missional living. People who already get going out and doing it right. You're losing some of them. And you're going to be losing people you built into your world. You're going to be losing people you married. People that you've been in their home. People that you've walked through difficult times. People who you think that they bought into your story, your life, and you're going to send them to go. And as a parent, You're excited to see them go, but it still hurts. Just saying. Just be ready for that cost. And see, what happens is when pastors can't do that, what they do is they limit who can go. There's been pastors who say, oh, yes, take people, just you can't take them. When you haven't counted the cost, you're going to limit who goes, and you're going to limit how many people who go. There's been moments and situations, and even in my context, great pastor, but the leaders were like, no, we can't send those people. They basically gave me a list of people I could take. It's because they didn't want it. And they said you can only take 12. So again, and that's just, it's life, guys. If you don't count the cost, you're going to plant. You will be sending people, and you're going to be sending some of your best. If you're not sending your best, don't plant. If you're not ready to send the best, don't plant. There's a cost to excitement. Because here's what happens. The planter, the people on the team, they're stoked. They are just amped. They're going to go out and do something brand new. It's cool. They're super, super excited. And the mother church is excited to see them go. And it's great because we're all still hanging together. And then the Sunday after you leave, there's a space that's empty. And the church is like, wah, wah, wah. It's real, man. It's a real thing, man. It's real. You have to count that cost. And you have to understand that the ones that go are super excited. And the ones that stay will feel lost. And what will happen is they will say, we shouldn't have done this in the first place. Or what about these people? Like, look at your own small groups. How many of them love to split off and create new groups? Imagine that with the church. Because it's the Sunday after the launch. And it's the Sunday after that, when God seems to be working in their space, but doesn't seem to be working in the big church. There's a cost to excitement. There's a cost to finances. There is. And again, I know you know this stuff, so I'm not trying to tell you something you don't already know. There's a cost to your finances. It's going to cost you money to send out a church. It's going to cost you staff. It's also going to cost you time of the people who go. You're not only going to lose money by sending them, you're going to lose money because they're gone and they're going to be tithing in a different context. I know you know this, but I'm just telling it like it is. There's a cost to this. And for those of you who are going to potentially plan or step out, I think one of the biggest costs that you're going to face is safety. You're going to face the safety of a family. You're going to have to give up the safety of money, the safety of infrastructure, the safety of having other people to fall back on, because it's just you. So those are the things there. In the end, hear me. I think you should, because the costs are worth it. The costs are worth it. And so the question is, do you really want to plan? And then the next question I have is, do you already have a missional heart and actions? Because it's really hard to lead someone to where you're not already going. And that, my friends, Jeremiah is going to come up and kind of hit that next stage. But anyway, so I'll answer questions at the end, kind of in our context, how it worked, how it didn't work, maybe some of the challenges that we faced, maybe some of the unhealth in some of the planting dynamics of what caused challenges to us, and then how maybe we could have done it better as a plant too. That's a little later on, but do you really want to plant? Really, really counting the costs. And my brother's going to do that.
Yeah, just to piggyback and doing this trade-off. It's actually been fun working with Graeme and Marc over this, because wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, but also different experiences. The mission of the church is one and the same for a church plant or sending church, a small church, large church, whatever church. Before I was sent to do my church planting apprenticeship, which I recommend if you're considering church planting, was to always remember the metaphor of the simple things of sitting under a tree and sharing the gospel with people. But at the heart of a church plant, as you consider church planting, there are various methodologies, various strategies, but at the heart of it, the purpose of a church plant, much like most ministries, is to extend God's kingdom. And more often than not, I find that as we train church planters, we're training pastors, we're training preachers, we're training teachers to do the work of standing up there on a Sunday morning and leading a church service. Sometimes one thing that gets neglected, and I think Feb Central Church Planting does a good job of highlighting, is the importance of the fact that we're going out there to continue pushing back the gates of hell in the cities that we're in. Because if that's not the interest of what we're trying to do in our churches, but especially church planting, we're missing one of the greatest experiences that we can have as we get into that battle. And as Marc said, being part of that battle is actually very hard. A couple of what he talked about in terms of the costs, even to the planter itself. Influence is one thing, but there's spiritual battle that you sometimes go to bed with. As a church planter, when I first started the apprenticeship, I remember this really, really vividly because I was doing my seminary classes. I was learning Old Testament theology, really loving that experience. That very night, I was called by someone that I was reaching out to come pick him up from somewhere. He just gave me this address, and I realized he just invited me to a crack den. He was addicted to crack cocaine, and it was a beautiful story. I can share it some other time, but it's not important for now. But both of those things, as we grow in our ability to teach and preach the gospel, is really important. But also acknowledging we're going into a heavy spiritual battle as we go out into the missions field. So counting that cost is really important. I have a few things I'd like to share. What did I do with the pointer? There are a few, proverbial things I'd like to share based on some of our experiences getting out there in church planting. I say proverbial because I think all three of us, as I share these points, all three of us can tell you that none of these things worked out ideally in how we tried to approach it. But as people that are considering being a church planter or being a sending church, a mother church, whatever brought you here, these are some proverbial things that I'd like for us to do better in as we continue to plant healthier churches and churches that are motivated to plant healthy churches. So the first one, it's not a novel idea, but in regards to understanding how important the spiritual battle that we're entering into as sending churches and especially as church planters, we are praying and fasting over the people that we're sending, much like Paul and Barnabas. Side note, I really wish there was a letter to Antioch. I would have loved to have read that book, but maybe they were doing things so well that they didn't need one. But they send their best, and as Marc was talking about, that probably came at a heavy cost of their own experience, but what a beautiful description of a church that was willing to give off their best. And as it talks about in the book of Acts, they were these unknown church leaders. They were not named. But think of the impact they had in the gospel movement all across this world because of what they were willing to do. And that comes with a great sense of discernment and prayer coming together and going and sending people prayerfully. There is a tendency to come into this with this idea of sometimes, yes, church planting can take away some of your influence, but in other ways, us rebellious church planters want to gain some influence by becoming a church planter and doing things our way because we know what's best usually. And that's something I want to warn against too. Some of the burdens that we unnecessarily bear as church planters or even churches that are thinking of planting churches is that what's going to be different about this one? And I don't think that that's the main purpose of why we're church planting, to reinvent anything. but to just be committed to what the Lord has instituted as a commission to all of us, and we're expressing it in the way of church planting. It's really important. And that leads us into raising and sending qualified leaders. Paul writes to Timothy to continue teaching what he's being taught. And multiplication being an integral part of it, even what Paul expresses through his mission and what he was trying to do in all of these different cities, imparting that to Timothy as he leads a group of churches to continue multiplying, continue sharing the gospel, invest in good discipleship and leadership development in your own context. We have a few people on our team that are completely dedicated to building curriculum for churches that are looking to bring discipleship and multiplication into the context of their churches. How do you even start that conversation there? I think there was Dave was leading a session. Dave is here. You can talk to him about that. But he was leading a session yesterday, which I hope some of you got a chance to talk to. But he knows his stuff down pat, so he'll probably share it with you in 5 seconds if he needed to. But lean into some of the resources that we're providing, both as a church planter, but also a sending church. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to reinvent anything. There are a bunch of resources that we would love to send to you and come alongside of you with. As we're raising leaders, we're also focusing on trying to be a team-based sending ministry. As I say all of this, like I want to confess to you, like none of this worked ideally, even in my own experience. But I just want to share the reason I write these things is because we didn't do it as well as we could have. I know the holes that we left in our church ministry because we didn't have these things preset. And you may not either. God will provide. God has kept us alive through a lot of different things. But again, proverbially, these are some things that you want. Plurality of leadership is important in a local church context. It's also important in a church planting context. Like I said, sometimes we want our church planters to be good teachers. That might be their primary gifting. But a church plant is going to need a person with an apostolic gifting, a person with an evangelism gifting, a person that is just committed to praying without ceasing for this particular work. It's a body that comes together that works beautifully to extend God's kingdom, and one part of the body cannot say to the other part of the body that you're better or you're not, that you're worthless. And that's important in a church, and that we're seeking to bring people together, bring plurality of elders into a church. We're actually working on that as a church plant ourselves. We have been blessed with 2 men that are entering, or one is already in our elder and training program, and another one is entering into it. And it's really exciting for me as a church planter, like coming alone into our city, being the primary elder, but now seeing men being raised up to co-lead, co-champion this church with me. It's a real blessing. As much as we have a tendency to see this as a solo effort sometimes, if you can send a team, send a team. It works much better. The fourth, this is actually where I want to be. The fourth thing I'd like to share is after doing the spiritual work, after doing the discernment, after raising up good leaders, placing your hands on them prayerfully and considering sending them. I think it's really important for churches and church planters to think strategically about where you're hoping for these church plants to be. One thing I find that we don't do too well is to actually do that step of entering into the Areopagus, into the marketplace, and just observing. Paul did go to the synagogue first, but then he went and observed the community that he was trying to reach out to. And I think that's very valuable for church planting. If you are the church planter, if you are the sending church, to start to survey the places around you. What's happening in the places around you. Paul says that become all things to all people, so that by all possible means that I might save some. It takes some effort to understand what is the gospel in this community. What is the good news that people are excited about in this community? Where are people gathering? What excites this community to gather together? What are the deep holes in this community? How is the gospel of Jesus a better news based on the things that you learn about this particular community? I think it's vastly important to go into something with, like as Marc was saying, to measure well, to make sure you have enough for what you're trying to do. One of those things that you need to learn is where we're going, and then the community that you're trying to reach. For my city, something that I did before we got launched, I was encouraged to look at a few resources. So Stats Canada, you have hard data about demographics, age, ethnicities, languages, all those sort of things. It's interesting to learn. 60% of our city would be people that are first or second generation immigrant, which English would be their second language. That was interesting to know. And something that we tried very early on is, would it be worth having English speaking lessons in the context of the missional community and in the context of a family home, inviting people in to practice their language skills. That's something that we were thinking about. Enviro next is for lifestyles segmentation. So when you're talking about how much people make in this particular area, how people are spending their money, you can learn a little bit about different idols that people have just based on some of this information. And then ARDA is specifically data for religious organizations and the work they're doing in a community. I thought that was very helpful to know the different, even churches that are not necessarily gospel based in our community, what they were doing, what programs they were offering. ARDA was a good resource for that, recommend it. So this is some of the things that I learned of our own city, and again, this is very easy to find. So it shouldn't take too much time. I'm not saying that we have to spend our entire time doing a cultural context analysis, but I think it is helpful for us to educatedly go and understand our marketplace. So this is just some stuff about Brampton that I shared with you, and so some of the things that we were able to bring from what we had learned is, okay, so these are some things that we can do. We can do a multilingual service. We can try to encourage young families, because our city is growing in young families. Interfaith events. So I know of various missions organizations within our city that do interfaith dialogues. So you tell me about your faith and let me share the gospel with you of Jesus Christ. And it revolves around big holidays and stuff like that. That's fun. And then compassion ministries as well, like ESL, food banks. And there are other churches that might be doing this already. So even as a church planter, to build bridges with the churches that do exist, coming alongside them and say hey, we're a young church plant, we'd like to partner with you in encouraging one of these ministries. What would that look like? Those are some of the things that I really wanted to share. And like I said, we may not all get to this perfectly. I am speaking very proverbially in my own experience. This has been the hardest thing that I have done as a human being, and I know I haven't lived that long, but it's still the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's the closest I have been to Jesus Christ. And I focus more on the latter, and while it is important to count the costs, it is also important to look forward to the joys of hardship as we follow also a suffering Savior. If we're following someone like Jesus, we can expect hardship, we can expect all of these things that come to us, but he so emphatically says that he has overcome the world in spite of all of those things. So I just want to encourage you as sending churches with that, encourage you as potential church planters. It is a blessed ministry. Multiplication is not an option. It is something that all of us are called to be disciples that make disciples that make disciples. If church planting is the avenue in which God is calling you to do that, which I would definitely encourage, please talk to one of us. We would love to help you through the process. Graeme is going to be talking a little bit about the process and what Feb Central has to offer. But two housekeeping things. There is a gift bag that you can pick up on the way as a gift from our church planting ministry to you. There is also a Google form on an iPad at the back. If any of this catches home, if you want more information, if you're a potential church planter, potential sending church, let us get your information and follow up with you. We would love to journey with you through this. I'm going to invite Graeme to come up.
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap things up, kind of bring everything home. For our kind of thought through this was Marc really kind of setting up your heart's desire for church planting, make sure we're counting the cost, making sure that we're actually feeling the need and understanding what God has called us to. Jeremiah hopefully give you some practical points about how do you actually now begin to take what's in my heart and start like thinking through it. So hopefully if you're a sending church, you're raising up leaders, you're starting to put aside funds so it doesn't just come out all at once when you go to plant. And then also you're now thinking through where are some good locations and thinking through it. And so they're very practical steps. And so far we haven't really mentioned anything about us. We've more just been mentioning about what you can be doing as a local church, and that's what we would love to continually see is more of our local churches saying, hey, here's the work we've done, and now we come to the fellowship, and now help us make it a reality. And so that's where I just want to go over. We have a lot in there. Who's got a magnifying glasses out there? Binoculars. You can read all that. And so there is a lot that we do, and we have tried to think through it strategically. But how do we take either a planter or someone who's interested in planting, an individual, or a church, and how do we walk them through, again, along the way using what we have seen the Lord do through us and through our church plants previously, what we see in the scriptures, and really help them get to a point in time where we're not just that they plant a church, but again, that they plant a church that is also planting more churches. And so again, we have a linear thing on the screen, but it's only because it's a flat screen, okay? But the idea is that this is an infinity circle, and that's where if you've ever seen, I guess right here, it's got the M magnified, M in it, but it's also an infinity sign. There's a few other symbols that people have gotten here too, but it's an infinity sign because, again, this is an ongoing process. Your church that you're at was one day planted. Somehow, some way, maybe 70 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, I don't know. And so we want to continually see this take place and see, again, God's kingdom moving forward and seeing the lost being saved. So we just want to highlight, there's kind of 5 key steps that we do. The first one is simply recruitment. And whether that's meeting an individual that the Lord is working on, or primarily, again, one thing that we'd love to continuously grow is that it's our churches that are coming to us and say, hey, I have an individual, or I have some people that want to plant. We have a location we're thinking about, and hey, we've been saving up funds. If you came to us, you would be our favorite churches, okay? With that, you came to us with that, that would be awesome. If you're not, and you're still interested, we're more than happy to work alongside of you to say, hey, you know what, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we have an individual, and we don't have money, we don't have funds yet, but we're still happy to have this conversation to help you get there. But ideally, the kind of situation that we would arrive at is say, hey, we have a location, and primarily we also have an individual. Sometimes churches come to us and they have a location, but they don't have an individual, and we'll try to help them with that. But the recruitment process is kind of ends with the key aspect of going on our website. If you've never been to our website, go to it. I think we redid it about a year or two ago. It looks awesome. And on there's a part for applications. And so we always direct people to go in there and to apply. Even if you're not sure about planting, just go and apply. It gives us the permission then to help come along this discernment process with you. And we'll do some reference calls to your church and to others in your life and see, hey, is the Lord wired you in this way? And sometimes you have an idealistic picture of like what a church planter looks like. Again, get to know either Marc, Jeremiah, and I. All 3 of us are very differently gifted and wired. Get to know our church planters. There is no like cookie cutter picture of what a church planter looks like. And so, but we try to assess through that. And that's kind of the next section, as we come alongside of you and assess whether we kind of feel like this is where the Lord is leading you. And we want to encourage you, like, we're about the kingdom. And so sometimes it's like, hey, we think you'd be better, fitted in a church, an established church setting. Sometimes we think you maybe start with an apprenticeship, or maybe, you're full on ready to be a planter. And here's the context to which we think would actually be best. The good news is that we are not the local church. We are just, again, helping the discernment process, and so we still want to make sure that it's your local church that is sending you, and it's them that has that affirmation in your life as well. And so we work with you through that. The next key thing is when things really get going, when we're like, hey, you know what, we're supportive of this, your church is affirming of it, and we're moving forward. And so there's a number of things that kind of take place in there, but our key thing I want to highlight is just our greenhouse training. And so I do want to highlight, we have really cool business cards at our table. And they have seeds infused inside of them. And you take that home and you water it and put it in your garden first, then water it, and it'll grow. And so keep it with the planting theme. And so our greenhouse is this opportunity where before you get going, before you jump in, before you start creating too much of a plan, we come alongside, provide teaching and training, and really a lot of feedback and discussion to help you to make a great plan, so that you can go from a greenhouse situation to now going into the real world and planting. That's kind of the fifth stage. We help you with round tables, an opportunity to learn from teachers, to learn from each other as other planters, and then also to be coached from existing church planters. And many times too, we also connect you with other mentors and other key people in your life. And then lastly, we want to make sure that you get to a place of maturity. So we want to make sure you're established, you're strong, you're healthy. That looks different in different contexts. But we want to make sure that you're there, that you're ready. And then again, what do mature churches do? What do mature people do? They multiply. And so we want to make sure that not only are you getting to a point in time where you're established in a mature church, but you're also at the point in time where you are now thinking again of planting again. Whether that's you as an individual or as a church, but hopefully both, but at least as a church, because we want to continually see God's kingdom advance and move forward. Again, why do we do this all? To magnify the Lord. That's why we do this. So I'll bring Jeremiah and Marc back up. We're going to do some Q&A. We got, I'm going to say 20, potentially 25 minutes. Again, we've been very general. So if you have any specific questions or general ones too, we'll try our best. Like if someone's like, how much money should we save for a church plant? Or how much is the budget of a church in the first year? We'll give you those kind of thoughts or ideas. So we got it. Okay, well, we'll go here.
Could each of you guys take 2 minutes just to share like where your church plant is and what the context of why you planted out of, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We were on a strict timeline, so we cut that out. But it is a good question. So for myself, I became a Christian. I think it goes all the way back to then. When I was 17, I heard about church planting in like the first 3 months, becoming a Christian. I just loved that idea. It was this idea of like, I'm actually seeking to reach the lost. And that was kind of drove me to it early on. And then got connected through Tom Haynes and provided a church planting apprenticeship to be a part of. But yeah, our ambition was just to we need to actively reach the lost. And I'm still convinced of it. Church planting is the best way. Not the only way, but I think is the best way to go and to reach the lost, reach into new areas, new communities. And so after my apprenticeship, there was a church that was closing in Mississauga. And instead of closing, they said, hey, can you do something through us? And so we went into Mississauga, a very diverse place, and we were excited to do that. It was a bit of a renewal, starting with a core team of people who didn't have much motivation. They just didn't want to close. And so that was a unique situation, but with a new vision, new name, and after a number of years, a lot of new people in regards to who was there compared to who it is now. So, yeah, so we're in Mississauga.
Yep. Next. So, Marc and planted in Chatham, Ontario, which is, for a while it was the mullet capital of Southern Ontario. Mullet party.
Oh, like the hair.
The hair mullet, yeah. Not the fish, the hair, yeah. I was in an established church for a really long time. Loved it, it was great, enjoyed the ministry there, but recognized that there was a disconnect with what the church was doing. Not the church was bad, the church was amazing, the church was great. But we just weren't seeing the influx of people in the community come to Jesus that we would hoped and desired to see and program to be. And so the Lord gave us a vision of maybe making a simpler process to do ministry, to enable a better onboarding for people who yet had no relationship with Jesus Christ, or to get those who are returning back to Christ. So we called every single church in the community and asked how many people are actually in your building on a Sunday. Like not how many people do you have come on Christmas? How many people do you actually minister to on a fairly regular basis? And obviously we just called the churches that were evangelical. And we realized in the city, 44,000 people, there were 40,000 people who weren't really truly connected to any kind of faith community. And we thought that's too many. And so then what we did is we realized, well, if every church that was doing ministry with evangelism, that were doing it so well, and doing it so well they could grow to the point where they're able to fill two gatherings or 3 gatherings or 4, there'd still be 38,000 people in our city who had no place to belong in that. So we thought, well, let's plant a church. So the Lord sent us out to our church. Our church context was always going to be, they always said, yes, we want to plant, but we're only going to plant when we're 800. And I was like, that's fine, but what if we don't get to 800? Because in their idea is that safety, right? You've got to be careful. And again, they took an incredible step of faith, and they said, well, they're about a church of 300 and 350, and they're like, yeah, you know what, let's do it anyway. Plant in our hometown, in the actual same city of about 45,000 people. They sent us out to plant there. And so we took a group of people, a small group, there was about 20 of us total, a couple kids and some singles, some individuals, and we just went out and started, through the blessing of our church, the sending of our church, planted a church in Chatham, and then 2 years later, as we grew, and God just did some really cool things through our story, God repopulated theirs. And all the money that they gave us and sent us, it all came back. So the Lord kind of worked, his math is pretty cool that way. He can make 1 + 1 = 5. He's God. And he did it, and we've experienced some incredible blessing. My story is different. I've had a time in my life. It's not that it's not hard. It's hard. But man, it's been awesome. I wouldn't change it for the world. Do it again. Well, I'm too old to do it again. But yeah, it was awesome. Good experience.
Jeremiah, we planted around 5 years ago in the city of Brampton. We just had a deep desire to reach a very diverse city, a lot of South Asians to reach out to. For many of our more rural churches around the area, I think there's a lot of conversation around is there a God? Is there not a God? Am I a fox today or a hippopotamus tomorrow? We don't have a lot of those conversations. Our conversations can get very spiritual very quickly. But in that, there's also darkness and blindness and hard-heartedness that comes with those two. And it's been really cool to use hospitality as a way to reach people. It's a very biblical principle. Elders need to be teachers, but they also need to be hospitable. So we're trying to teach that into our leadership from day one. How to really bless the experience. A couple of the things that I'd say, we were sent from a church in Guelph, and the first lesson we learned from that was Guelph is really far away from Brampton. So if you're considering attaching yourself to a mother church or a mother church considering a church plant, look fairly close to you first before you take an hour and a half away. It was challenging to feel supported at the time, and we also did the really wise thing of starting right before COVID. But it was actually a really cool blessing for us because us and the core team got really tight. We were actually small enough. I still remember the people limit was 15 people. And with my newborn, we just made 15 people, so we were still able to meet at the time, and God has grown us and blessed us in amazing ways. You see a lot of what happens in church planting, and is you see a lot of people transferring from one church to the other, And it happened to us too, like after COVID, we saw an influx of people that really wanted a more close-knit type of church. And like, it was like 2 years ago, where it's just like wrestling with God, like this is not why I got into this. Are we going to see fruit? When are we going to see fruit? And God's not necessarily going to answer that very quickly, but for us, that very month, we saw our first Hindu Brahmin family come to know Jesus. And if you know anything about the culture, when they make a decision for Jesus, they make a decision against their family, against their culture, against their names that they were given. It's a pretty hard decision to make, but we got to see that as a church, and we feel really blessed by it. So we're seeing more and more of that happening, really encouraged by what God is doing.
Good. What are you? Question?
Moses, I'm just curious to know the kind of help that you received from your parent church, and whether there was any other help that you wished that they gave you and they didn't when you planted.
Yeah. Well, just to say, you have the difference here. In our church planting, there's a different variety of kind of how churches are sent. So in my situation, I didn't have a mother. I was an orphan. But the beautiful thing about the fellowship was a lot of the other churches around supported in some capacity. A lot of encouragement, a lot of prayer, some finances, some coaching from the pastors around too. And so I really did have to rely on other aunts like churches. And the fellowship itself, I didn't mention this, but the fellowship supports. We do $30,000 over the first 2 years to financially help, and then also just the amount of training and supporting and everything else we do to kind of be there as well. So that was our situation.
Yeah, I'd say I think it would be really good as a potential sending church to really see this church plant as a baby that you are starting to help grow. So what that means is I think it would be really important that the DNA of every elders meeting, for example, would have a section just talking and praying for this particular work. I think it would be really important for it to be highlighted for prayer at your Sunday services. I think it is really important, as Mark suggested, that you start to count the cost of finances, taking care of different ministry expenses, even covering the church planter's salary for a few years. That would all be good. Again, proverbial, it may not always work out that way, and God uses our 5 loaves and 2 fishes to do a whole host of different things. So I believe that, but ideally, you want a close relationship, you want a meaningful relationship where, as church planters, we're not just go out there, try something, and we'll see if it works or not. Just a more tighter, intentional, prayerful connection would be beneficial.
And our context was great. So our context allowed us to plant, to train for 6 months, all kind of still living there, working there, and serving there. And so people from the other parts of our community came and joined our launch team. And so we were able to train, able to still feel as though we were part of a community. And then they raised a bunch of money to send us. Then it got a little complicated. That's a whole other conversation. It got a little complicated on the other end of that because, again, some of the counting of the cost things, maybe they just didn't realize. So we were mothered, and we were birthed, and it was like, well, you're good. So yeah, it wasn't all beauty, but it was amazing. They gave us so many opportunities. I think what would have helped us better is for them to continue to pursue a more healthy relationship as a mother without constraining, without hovering, but at the same time releasing. But an ongoing encouragement would have been better. But again, great start, great launch, and then it was like, oh wait, you're still here? Kind of thing, yeah. But we can work that. It's another conversation.
I would say too, a lot of our Filipino churches cover the salary, the budget, and everything from the mother church for the first 3 to 5 years. So some days I wish I was Filipino. But, so there is a mix of that at our kind of our high end to churches that kind of say, hey, you're free to ask any of our people to give to you, but from a church budget, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
So again, it's a wide variety. But again, we would recommend a healthy commitment to even 3 years is a good timeline. So.
And it's important to know too that there's many kinds of church plant models. They don't all look exactly the same. Like even within our context, we have different models within that. Some have just different cost structures in that. We have a whole co-vocational end of our ministry where people are on purpose working outside the community, not until they get paid full, but because it's a better opportunity to reach people in their community. So they're actually working outside the church on purpose and leading and planning a church. So there's different options and different kind of ways of going about it because ministry is expensive. Like it is absolutely expensive, and depending on your planting model, it may be a little bit more expensive. So we kind of work through that, so we can help you with those ones too.
You guys talked about like a launch team. What are the elders with that launch team? Would you prefer?
Highly recommend.
Yeah, like send elders with the team.
If you can send a plurality of leadership from the get-go, that is such a beautiful thing because the weight of pastoring along with evangelism, along with like being a coordinator or director, is not all falling on one person. And that person could be like gifted in one or two of those things, but the weight of everything is not being put on one. I actually think in a more practical spiritual sense, like having multiple pastors is just healthy for a church.
I would just say as long as that elder isn't like a spy. As long as that elder is not like, okay, you're the elder of our church and you're also just going to oversee the baby and make sure the baby's not doing something stupid. Because the baby's going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
Like it's going to, like it's just a plan.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Marc
So
is saying
are there models, just following up on that, where, like, because you also want to, I would assume, honor the church planter and the people God's putting in that planter's life who could be leaders and elders. Have you seen models where you kind of raise up elders alongside that church planter who aren't necessarily currently serving but with
Absolutely.
that intention?
Yeah.
Good.
I would just say honestly, like church planting is sometimes the best scenario for people to grow in their faith and in their ministry. So like that's one thing I encourage when people come to our church. Like you could go and serve in a large church and still bless it and be great. But like if you come to ours, like, you'll get hands-on ministry, you'll practice, you'll learn, you'll understand the ins and outs and the difficulty. And I think sometimes church planting is better at raising up elders because there's more opportunity.
So like, could a church? Let me just ask you guys. If a church had a church planter, hypothetically, which we do,
Not so hypothetical.
would you would you want to maybe say to that church planter, hey, start keeping an eye out for people who are potential elders, and we're going to do this decision together with our current elder team, but not only are you raising up that planter, you're maybe raising up a couple.
Yeah, I think it's important for you to even just talk to your elders. Hey, who feels called to go?
Well that's
like to be honest, who feels called to go?
Sure.
And you know what? It's not just don't go but go. I think if you want to God goes to go. I think the other part too, and Graeme hit on this, and this is super, super real. The initial elders in our church are people who were eldership material, people I had already built into. We had kind of built it. They were elder. There was one elder already that started with us. But the other two guys that came in place were guys who could have been elders in our church, but they weren't a part of the hierarchy of leadership. Like they already had a bunch of people already in the pipeline. These guys could have been in the pipeline, but too many people already in the pipeline clogging it up. As soon as we launched out, these two dudes just hit it hard and well. It's great. So they were already in play. But just in a larger church, they don't have the space to take everybody in spaces of leadership. And so they got an opportunity in us, but they were kind of already there. So that's what I'm saying, give your best. Don't just get people who are, you need all kinds of people, but give some of your best. And they're already kind of in leadership and already in an eldership position, for the most part, somehow.
I would say too, I think there has been a shift, and I think we continually need to push in that direction of no longer a single figurehead like a Marc Driscoll or James McDonald, and everyone else is just kind of and everyone else is just kind of supporting them in their ministry. But more the planter is there to kind of facilitate the team, empower and equip the team to do the work of the ministry, and so that especially that the church plant doesn't rise or fall. No pun intended. On that one person.
Wow, that was good.
Anyway, but yeah, honestly, I think what we've seen, even regardless of a church getting to maturity, the hardest transition for a church is when the planter steps away. And so whether that's early or whether it's after maturity or whether it's even 20, 30 years down the road, And so I think planning that from day one.
Sometimes
needs to
even a
be done.
vacation.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I think someone raised their hand back there.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like when it comes to the planting team,
Yeah.
what has your experience been like that with maybe when they're, yeah, like you said, beautifully raised up, these guys just killing it, but then maybe also some people that they kind of talk the talk, but then once it really
Dead
happens,
weight,
they're not
baby.
actually like
Yeah.
sharing the gospel, they're not really living the mission of like what do those conversations look like? I mean, you were eventually they're no longer on the core, like the core team kind of dissolves.
We'll walk you through we walk people through that, what does it look like to be on a mission team? But what we do is we get clear guidelines. So this is what we do. This is what we're going to do. And usually within your launch team or within your core team are people who are already doing those things. So they already have a history of doing those things. And so you're kind of, again, not that other people can't come, but the ones that you really truly invest in as the leadership of your church are people who are already walking in those circles, or already walking in those ways. And so you're doing that already. And so you've already kind of assessed them before you join them into this small group of people that you train with the heart and the vision and just the culture of your church plant. And so you're already doing that. But then again, you get clear guidelines. We say, hey, so if you're going to be in a part of church, you have to give. And so we even had one of our guys who say, so how much are you giving? Like, are you going to? And again, they ask the hard question. Are you going to give? This is what you do. You're also committing to this for this period of time. And you got to do that. You're signing up for this because this is a bigger thing. And you're going to be busy. You're going to do these things, but here's the kingdom here's the kingdom vision of that. But these are people who were kind of already in place. Now, other people came to our church that wanted to be a part of that. We said, no, we're only going to train these ones. You can come later, but just know this is who we are.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think that's one way, kind of a really beautiful, ideal way. It felt like, like David walking alongside and picking up people from every which persuasion to like build this little army for himself. I think a big thing for a church planter is to have the capacity to share a vision and stick to it.
Yes.
Because like sometimes, you attach yourself to a church that has a similar mission and vision, similar ecclesiology, similar philosophy of ministry, and then you can like find those people and bring them along with you. There are other situations where like you're kind of on your own, you're sort of spreading this word out there that you're starting something and like a group of people come. Part of my journey was like seeing people come from many backgrounds, and some of them were church for a very long time that needed to start to get used to a different like way of being the church, a different ecclesiology. So that took time, but it's important for the planter to be the best vision caster for what you're trying to do. The other part of our experience was like since its start, 20% of our church has actually been people that were not Christian, that were coming very consistently to be part of this really new, fresh spike of community. And that's even more important to be a good vision caster and sticking to like, who is Lord in this? Like community is not our savior, Jesus is our savior, and continuing to cast that vision. It's really, you could have it like both ways where you have a church that has a similar thing and they send people with you, but sometimes the church planter has to do the work of really honing in on what they're communicating is the mission and vision of what they're trying to do and doing the work to disciple people to it. That's just another...
Yeah, because if you don't do that, because people are excited, and so they'll buy into this vision and understanding, but as soon as they get on site and have to do the work, and then, hey, I want to live missionally, I want to live missionally, but when you actually start doing it, in the way that they do it or the way that we did it, we were still very much unlike our mother church, even though there's some similarities. We were very much unlike them, and so they kept asking the question, so when are we going to do that? Well, no, remember, we're not doing that. We're doing this. And we're not doing this so we can do this. So that's getting clear on vision, clear on vision, clear on vision, clear on vision. And you're trying to find, again, if you have the opportunity, you're finding a few people, 1 or 2 people or 12 people, who already understand a little bit of that DNA, and you spend time training them, or just one other person. So you got to keep going with that.
Just that my 2 cents, and maybe one more question. But I think one thing that is underestimated what a church planter does, and I think maybe number one, you guys are saying it, but we're culture creators. So you're creating a new family, and you're creating a culture to which this is what we're about. You do that through vision casting, through correction, right? Many times. Just thinking if someone's not following through, you got to do the hard work of sitting down with them. Jeremiah's good at that, telling them to leave. But you're creating a family, right? And I'm just thinking of 2 Timothy 3. What is God's word for? For teaching, correcting, reproof. And so 2 of those are negative. And you got to do that with God's word. This is what we're about. This is what God's word has told us to do. This is what we're going to create. And let's make sure we're doing that, especially early on. I always say, it's not about the amount of people you have, the size. It's about the health, and healthy things grow. So you would rather have a good team of 10 people who are solid and committed and sharing their faith and reaching out and loving each other than 50 people who are flaky. Because in 5 years, 10 years, you'll be far better as a church.
Yeah, and those 50 people leave when you don't do things the way they want to.
And at the same time, some of the people who are going to come are people who are going to they're going to dip their toes, because you're going to find that you're going to reach a lot of people who are just coming back. And so we found that some of the most people, the people that we reached early on, were people who didn't know Christ, but also people who were like, when they literally walked in, they were kind of afraid the walls were going to fall down. And so it took time. And so some people you have patience for. The Christians that should know this stuff already, we listen, no, this is who we are, get on board, or this isn't your space. For those that needed time, let's take some time. Let's walk through that. So, before you do the chart, we have questions, like we're still going to be here.
Well, there was a question.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just one quick one. So, as church planters, do you guys now have a vision for your churches, the church planting churches? And then, if so, what is, do you have a timeline in mind? How soon after the plant do you start thinking about the next year?
Yeah, so we were going to plant within 4 years. And we had a planter who was doing it, and then the world hit hard on that guy, and we lost him. And it was tough. And so it really broke our hearts. We were really planned and kind of amped, ready to go. Yeah, that broke our hearts. So it took a little bit of time to get back to that. So right now we're in the process of, there's a guy on our staff right now who is either going to do this, one of your things. One, he's going to take my role. I'm going to transition out and then find what the Lord has me to do. Number 2, he's going to be our planter in Wallsburg, which is a little town next to us that needs Jesus like crazy. And he's gonna go there. Or 3, we're gonna find someone else. So we have a 3-year plan for this guy. So within 3 years, either he's gonna plant that, or we're gonna have someone else within a year probably that we know that's gonna probably plant that. So probably 3 years. We're planning with another church in our association that we're gonna partner together to do that. So within probably 2 to 3 years, we should have another place on site that's autonomous from us. It's not going to be a forward city plan. It's actually going to be its own thing that we're going to give them. But we're going to share resources and share pastoring, pasture, whatever they need. We're just going to give it to them in the same source because we're really pastor. So 3 years. Would have been earlier if it's just a longer story.
For us, and it's similar. You got a similar story too. But we've had 2 church planting apprentices. One worked out for ministry. One hasn't worked out as well. But it was really cool. We'd always prayed and wanted that the time that we got recognized as a mature, established church, that we would also announce that we were planting a church. And by God's grace, it happened. Didn't happen the way I expected it to. But it was through a friend who, for many years, interested in church planting and talking in conversations with him. And eventually he said, hey, we're ready. And so I said, hey, well, let's go through the assessment process with the fellowship. And then they needed a mother church. And so we decided to say, hey, we're still quite a small church. We won't be able to support you financially, but we can look after your finances. We can take the risk on us because our liability is now on them. And so they just launched in March. Phil Coolwell, he's around here somewhere. But they just launched their Sunday gathering end of March. So Hope Valley Church in Mississauga. So I was looking at if our small church can do that, then anybody should be up to.
Yes.
I set the bar really low. Okay. And Jeremiah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah. As I mentioned, one of my points, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, you don't necessarily just multiply because you have enough people. Leadership is so important. So we had a similar journey of having a couple of church planting apprentices come on, and for various reasons, one got further into the life of our church and is probably going to co-lead it with me one day. hard task, and it's any type of ministry is not for the faint-hearted, but I think church planting has a very special, unique set of challenges that just require a lot of people that are okay with a lot of uncertainty, people that are okay with just trusting God in a very supernatural way, and those are like hard to develop. But I also do think that church plants are a good place to apprentice church planters. So if you have a church, if you're part of an established church that potentially has this like young guy or old guy or whatever couple that would be a good candidate, but they're not there yet, like consider either doing it yourself, like hosting a church planting apprenticeship, or send them to a church plant. It could be an encouragement for that church plant, but also the best way to get their like knees deep into what that life looks like.
Good question.
Good. Well, appreciate you guys. You guys have good questions. Don't forget, Bashar's going to come up, but don't forget, if you want to fill out information, you want more details, the iPad in that bag. We also got bags for you, goodie bags. Feel free to talk to us as well. Bashar, you want to go?
Yeah, and we're staying here too, so like we're not running out. So if you guys have questions, we're in.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Baba. Please join me to show some appreciation to the wonderful guys.